Yeah, you might have caught the gist of that from both of these key, largely conservative players here in the House and the Senate. This tax that would be included in the Senate plan isn't necessarily permanent. Now, of course, I've come to discover that a lot of taxes, once they're in place, are very, very hard to remove. But nevertheless, they're holding out, dangling, if you will, that possibility to Republicans who might wince at that and think that, look, calm down. We can always remove this later in tax reform. What are the chances of that? Tea Party Patriots, Jenny Beth Martin. Jenny Beth, what do you think?
Hey, thanks for having me, Neil. Well, I think that right now the American people's faith in Congress to actually keep its promises is really, really low. And what we're seeing right now still from the Senate, contrary to what you and the previous guests were saying, the bill right now before the Senate still has not earned the support of Tea Party Patriots
and it never will. You know what, Jenny Beth? I don't want to be cynical or jaded. I'm sounding like that. I'm not in a bad Monday mood. It's not going to happen. They are so far apart on this. They're still looking for perfection when the best they can do is a good bill that's an alternative and more at least market-friendly and free market-friendly alternative to what's out there. No one is crashing Medicaid. No one is ripping it apart. It still grows under this Senate plan. Actually, it grows substantially, just not as much as it would under the President's Affordable Care Act, President Obama's. Nevertheless, I think they're going to screw it up. Disavow me of that notion if I'm wrong.
Well, I think that what we're seeing, well, I'm just going to tell you what our supporters are saying, Neil. That's what I always do is reflect what the grassroots are saying around this country. They voted for repeal of Obamacare, and they're looking at the bill right now before the Senate, and it still is not repealing Obamacare. It's leaving in place some of the taxes.
They're right, but I'm saying they'll never get to perfect, right?
You're asking, can we trust future tax reform and to repeal the taxes later? And what our supporters are saying is they haven't kept the promises yet for repeal. We want to get this bill where we can support it. They can do that by putting the language in from the Consumer Freedom Amendment and not twisting it the way it's twisted right now.
All right, well, Jenny Beth, that's an interesting thing. You're always a straight shooter with me, and I always appreciate that. But your view is it is worth the fight to make this right. Your view is something isn't always better than nothing, that the Fred Barnes approach, just settle for this, move on. We could deal with taxes, as some of those prior guests were saying later. You don't buy that.
Well, what I'm saying is that it is absolutely worth the fight to get it right now. And there are people across this country, not just the elected officials who promised to repeal it, but people across this country who knocked on doors, picked up the phone, made phone calls, donated to these candidates to get them the majority in the House and the Senate, and ultimately
they can't
Donald
agree,
Trump
though.
in the White House.
I'm telling you, Jenny, they refuse to agree. They are obstinate. I don't take anything away from being, whatever strong-willed you are for your particular cause, but they cannot come to an agreement. It's like my sons. They would rather punish themselves for hours than come together on something here, and that's the reality.
Well, if they want to earn the respect of the people who put them in the majority, they're going to have to take what they're doing right now in the Senate just a little bit further. They could do that by not neutering the language of the Consumer Freedom Amendment. I think if they would make sure that the way that amendment was presented last week is in there, the way it should be, that they probably could earn the support of Tea Party Patriots activists around the country, and that would give us enough faith to trust that they'll get tax reform closer to being correct as well. But they can't say that it's repeal when it's not repeal, and
but it's better than what's out there, right? I mean, I'm with you. It is certainly not repeal. By the way, because it is not repeal, they could have gotten a lot of Democratic support, because that's what Democrats were asking for in the beginning. Don't repeal it. They didn't, but it's too late for that. But your view is there is still a deal to be had. They can still get this right. Don't settle.
That's where we stand, and I am still optimistic that they're going to do that. It took several iterations in the House for the House Freedom Caucus to support it and to earn the support of Tea Party Patriots, and I think we've just got a little bit more to go in the Senate. I understand it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be what I want, and I guarantee you it's not going to be what the vast majority of the Tea Party Patriots supporters want either, but we want to get it enough that we can at least support it so that we can move to the next thing. And Congress, failure is not an option. They have to do this.
You know, you're speaking logic. You're speaking logic, Jenny Beth, as you always do. But I think failure very much is going to be an option. And then assume they can't come together on this. And I'm more jaded on this than you are. But then I think they ought to move on to the tax reform thing because time's a wasting. What do you think? If they can't agree on the health care.
Well, they're going to agree on the health care. They're going to get to a point where they can. They have to. They have to keep that promise.
I'm telling you. I have to eat right. I don't. So I'm just telling you. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. I'm going to be cautiously optimistic.
All right. You always are. Jenny Beth, I appreciate it. Very good seeing you again.
Thank you, Neil.